Hi, my name is Khleif, and I'm the host of the Lifetime Cash Flow Through Real Estate Investing podcast. And every week I interview multifamily rock stars, and we talk about how they've built incredible wealth for themselves and their families through multifamily properties. So hit the like and subscribe buttons to get notified every Monday when a new episode comes out. Let's get to it. Welcome to another edition of Lifetime Cash Flow Through Real Estate Investing. I'm Khleif, and I'm thrilled you're here. And we are going to have a very interesting guest on today. His name is Prukner. Now, Ian has pretty much done it all. He's what he calls himself a serial entrepreneur, like myself. He's a consultant. He's a speaker, best-selling author. He has bought and built and sold businesses in the eight-figure range, exits. And we're going to have a wide-ranging conversation. It's not going to just be real estate. It'll be about business in general. And he happens to live here in Sarasota. So I'm like, dude, I see him on Instagram every freaking day. I'm like, let's get together and have an interview because you're an interesting guy. So welcome, brother.
Hey, Rod. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah. Excited to be on.
Yeah, thank you. So why don't you do a better job than I could possibly do in talking a little bit about your history and where you started and what you've done and where you are now. And
sure.
Let's do it like that.
Yeah. So I started off as a pastor. I was a pastor for a church up in Michigan, which is where I'm from. I was a music pastor, so I wasn't a speaking pastor. I ran bands for a big mega church. And if anybody in your audience is a musician, they would know, like, if you can be a musician and make enough money to survive playing music, you're like the happiest person on earth. And that was me. I love what I did. It wasn't really a job. And my wife and I were newly married. We both worked for the church up in Michigan. And Detroit got super hard hit in the Great Recession, right, in 08, 09. It started hitting Detroit about a year previous to that. And so working for the church, charitable giving just stops when things get tight and things got bad. I ended up taking some pretty big pay cuts there. I was working a couple jobs on the side just to make ends meet. And we were on thin ice financially, and we fell through the ice. And I'll never forget, I need to make $250 a month. That was my shortfall.
Wow.
And so I was starting to look for how do I make a couple of $100 a month. So my best idea that I could come up with was to be a night manager at Rite Aid. And I was going to work 3 midnights a week for $14.55 an hour at the time. And after taxes, that would net me out my $250 shortfall. So that's what I was going to do. And my boss at the church, his name was Steven, he came to me one day after cutting my pay, and he's like, hey, Ian, are you still looking to make extra money? I said, with all due respect, you are my boss, but you see what you pay me here, right? Like, that is the stupidest thing you've ever asked me. Of course I'm looking to make some extra money. And he says, there's this guy that goes to the church. He does this thing. You could do it part-time. You'd probably be good at it. And I figured, well, I couldn't make any less money than I'm making here at the church. So I called this guy up. And I'm like, hey, my name's Ian. You probably recognize me being on stage at the church. My boss told me you might have an opportunity. He said, sure, come on by. I said, when? He said, how about in an hour? So it was a Wednesday afternoon in August of 2007. And I pulled up to this guy's house, right? He had this big castle-looking house on the lake. And I was super middle class. Nobody in my family had ever made six figures. Nobody in my wife's family had ever made six figures. We were middle class, middle income. We didn't really have any associations, no real wealth to speak of. And I pulled up to this guy's house, and no joke, I'm like, if he's not selling drugs to kids, I'm in. I don't care what he's doing, really, because I was smart enough to learn that, like, hey, this guy knows something about making money that I don't.
Right.
And so he was in the financial space. He offered to mentor me on a part-time basis. I figured, what do I have to lose? So I got started. My first year in that business, I made a six-figure income. And it was like life-changing.
So financial space, you got your series license and started doing financial planning.
Insurance and investments all of that. Yep.
Okay.
And so started in that. 2007, went full-time in that business. Fast forward to 2022, we had 48 locations, 1,400 reps all throughout the country. We actually sold that business in a multiple eight-figure exit. And no longer have that. And along the way, about 7-8 years into it, was really on autopilot. I had a great leadership team in place. We had good systems. We had some good software that we had built to help manage the team and manage that client base, which was close to 100,000 clients at the time we sold it. It's a pretty big entity. And so we built that all out, and it was sort of on autopilot. And I'm just like a creator, right? Like probably like you.
Entrepreneur mindset.
I can't sit still, right? My wife's like, you should take a break. 3 days, and I'm like, I got to do something. I got to find that. So I started buying real estate and putting it up for short-term rental. I started doing some flips. I built a pretty big house that was just sort of like fun. I think I built it and sell it. I started writing books and producing courses and doing some coaching and consulting, and that's sort of where I ended up. And a couple of years ago, a couple of friends of mine from the finance business called and said, hey, we want you to consult for a new idea that we have. They were building basically a digital, a tech financial product. And I loved it. I saw it and I thought it was like lightning struck me. This is a great idea. It's super simple. It's making a lot of money. This could be a really like a blue ocean scenario. Nobody's doing this. We're the first here. And so we went to work on that. We took that business in 2 years, done about 75 million in revenue, no ads, totally from scratch with a commission-based sales team that we built. And we're just really starting to ramp it up. So
that's the digital real estate.
Yeah, it's the digital real estate business.
So I asked him what he was doing before we got started, and he says, I'm doing digital real estate, and I'm thinking, okay, maybe they'll fractionalize real property. No. He's talking about digital assets, but you're using the moniker real estate. And so why don't you describe what it is?
Yeah, well, the reason we call it digital real estate is that's actually a pretty good idea.
What it really is. Now that you sit and think about it, once you hear what it is, you'll see it is a good name.
Yeah. So what we do is digital real estate. The best way to understand it is these are lead generating websites that produce a cash flow by selling the leads they generate, that are owned by third-party disinterested owners. These are people who are just looking to have a cash flow that is passive in nature, and they don't want to deal with renters. They don't want to have millions of dollars of leverage out there. So it's an asset that they can buy for a relatively small amount of money that produces multifamily-esque cash flows. And so we started building these out for ourselves at first. And then we had friends like, hey, can you build a few for us here? Can you build some there? And we saw an opportunity to scale that production up. So right now we've got about 7,500 of these lead generating websites up. Some are owned by our company. Most of those are actually owned by friends, family, other people that we've built these for. And yeah, so they commission us to build them. We do the data research. So what we're looking for is where's there a lot of search traffic for a certain service. We're in Sarasota. I'll use Sarasota as an example. 1,000 times a month, somebody goes online and searches Sarasota roof repair. You're doing some roof repair here right now, right?
Right.
And so they're looking for local roofers. So what we'll do is we'll say, hey, there's a lot of searching here. There's not very well managed competition. These guys are great roofers, but they're apparently not very good at online web traffic management. Right. So we'll go in there and we'll buy up all those domains. Sarasota Roofing Pros, Sarasota Roof Contractors, Sarasota Roofing Kings, whatever it might be. We'll obtain all those domains. We build websites on top of them, and then we rank them up to the top of the search engine. So when people are looking for that service, they find our sites. And so when they call our sites, our owner, say you owned that, you don't do roofs, you don't have a roofing company, but we have an interface that we built that connects to those local service providers. So it's really a win-win-win. The local service providers can get high quality leads that are unique to them. They're not being split. These people are searching for their service in their location, picking up a phone and calling. The consumers can get access to local pros who aren't big regional companies crushing it on SEO, and we can make good money connecting those two parties together.
Selling them the leads. I want to drill down with you a little bit. So you buy domains. That's a good way to get started. Are you making ad buys as well on these sites?
So you can. Up until this point, we've done completely organic.
So it's all been organic up to this point.
Organic.
So talk about some of the things you're doing, because this will actually add value to any of my listeners that are, have a website trying to get investors for deals or so on and so forth, passive investing kind of thing. What are some of the things you're doing to organically grow those sites?
Well, so I'm not an SEO guy, right? Okay. I'm a non-tech founder.
Do the best you can.
Yeah, but basically there's a lot of different components to how people find things. And people are finding things, they're searching for things in a lot of different ways today than they were even 12 months ago and 24 months ago. They're searching through AI, they're searching on social platforms, they're searching in ways that you wouldn't have thought about before. So you really need an all-encompassing strategy. Every single one of our sites has full social profiles. They're optimized for all search engines. They're optimized for AI searching. They're not built with AI because if you look at like Google right now,
it can tell if it's AI.
Yeah, and Google has their own AI. And so if you're writing copy with ChatGPT, which is really good if you train it well, and is super, super cheap, right? Like we could cut the costs down in building these assets by 70%. The problem is Google would destroy them in about 6 more months when they push their next update that goes and kills anything not written by Baird, right? Which is their thing. So it's an interesting world. You got to be well-rounded. You've got to have tactics that work on all of those different platforms, right? So like what works for your social profiles in searchability is not what works when people are Google searching you or they're on Bing. And so it's part SEO, it's part social platform management. And then we are actually in beta right now on a couple of different facets. One is running ads to them, and that's been very successful, but it's in a beta test, right? And then the fourth is actually lead arbitrage, which is really interesting. So what we've done is we built out this proprietary interface. We take 100,000 plus calls a month from people searching for these services. Real time, those calls are live transferred to end buyers who've agreed to pay a certain amount for those calls.
Those are the best leads. Yeah, so if you're getting a live transfer lead from somebody who's calling on a website phone number and you can do a live, that's a no-brainer. That's the best lead you can have.
So we've got all of that. And so we have these huge national buyers. We have contracts for them to buy all these leads. What we're finding is buyer A, who buys leads from us, they have pest control leads for $30 they're trying to offload. And buyer B that we use buys pest control leads for $70 from us. So we can actually buy from buyer A and sell to buyer B and route through the sites and create an arbitrage that is really interesting. And as far as we know, we're the only people out there in that space doing that right now. That's also in beta, but we see a great opportunity to scale these things much more quickly and put them on steroids as it relates to the income they can generate.
So how many roofers would get a lead from a website? I'm assuming more than one. And whoever gets it first.
So they're exclusive.
They're exclusive.
So we have what's called a ping post bid system. Okay. It's really pretty phenomenal to look at the technology that's involved in being able to do this all real time. So let's say you owned DallasConcretePros.com, hypothetically. I don't even know if that's one of our sites, but let's just say you own that. Okay, you're not a concrete guy, and that site gets a call from somebody in Dallas, presumably looking for concrete. Real time, that gets ping post bid on by every concrete contractor in our network in Dallas. And one guy bids $10, and one guy bids $22, and one guy bids $35, and one guy bids $50. Real time, that $50 bid is accepted, live transferred over.
This is done while they're on the phone.
Real time.
Holy cow, that's cool.
Yeah, 100,000 times a month right now. On our way to 200 and 300 and eventually 1 million and multiple millions of times a month.
Interesting. Wow, that's fascinating. Yeah, I mean, it's a very simple business model. I mean, we build websites, we rank them. I mean, our own website, and it's AdWords. It's and some of the things you just said. Certainly, all the social and the Google address and all these other things you got to do. But it's a very simple business model. Good for you, man. That's really cool. And so if somebody is interested in exploring that, they just go to your Instagram.
Just go to Instagram at Ian Prukner, shoot me a DM. And we have a weekly live webinar where you can go on, see some case studies, talk to some of the
What does a
members.
website cost, or how do you work it?
Okay, so an individual site right now costs $7,500 a unit. Okay, you got to buy a minimum of 3, so $22,500 minimum. Okay, and so each unit, I'll give you the financials, the time frames, and the risks. Okay, so each unit after a year, we expect that to be generating somewhere between $300 and $500 a month in gross cash flow. So not a lot. It's not life changing to have one, but let's say you had 10 of these. You bought that for $75,000. After about a year, let's say they're making $300 a piece. That's $3,000 a month. We take a 25% property management fee. Okay, so it's $2,250 a month. It's just shy of 30 G's a year on $75,000. You have no renters, you have no repairs, you don't have to go anywhere. If you're a business owner and you buy these through an existing business entity that has existing cash flow, you can get a cost segregation and you can write off virtually the entirety of that purchase against the same year's income. So it's an advanced depreciation.
How do you do a cost seg on a website?
So what happens is the $7,500, some portion of that is spent obtaining a domain. That's an asset. It's got to be depreciated over time. Everything else.
You can depreciate intellectual property assets?
Sure. You can depreciate but you don't even need the depreciation. Just forget you even want to do that, because such a small amount of that $7,500. Let's say that $7,500 we spent $50 on the domain. Okay. You can't write that off right now. It's got to be depreciated. Okay. The rest of it is servicing, writing copy, building the site, SEO management, social platform management. All of that is no different than you hiring an SEO company to run your website, and that's a deductible expense to operate.
Well, it's deductible. Okay, you said cost segregation. That's a term that we use in real estate, where you break down each of the individual entities or components of a building and shorten the lifespan, the depreciable lifespan, and accelerate that depreciation. So that's not what you're doing.
In our world, cost seg is what an accountant wants to see to understand which of this money was buying an asset and which of this money was servicing that asset.
Gotcha. All right. That's why I stopped you. It's like, wait a minute. Okay.
So yeah, we're talking two
different definitions of cost segregation. Okay.
Yeah, but the long and short of it is, say somebody buys $100,000 of this, about 97,000 of that, if they bought it in an existing business entity that has existing business income, they could deduct that as servicing expenses associated with that business.
Carry that out over a few years. I don't think you can expense it the first year, can you?
They can expense it the first year, or they can carry it, or they can offset the income with it. They could do whatever it is they want. We're not accountants. We can't give them accounting advice, but we do provide the cost segs and let accountants know, here's how these are standardly handled.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's a nice tax benefit to people who are high income. They're trying to figure out how to get rid of some of that income, and they don't want to buy another G-Wagon or something else, to depreciate.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, that's a very cool business model, and I know you guys are thinking, well, this doesn't have anything to do with multifamily real estate, and I know it doesn't. So this is more me satisfying my own itch to find out what Ian's all about and see what he's up to. So, I still think it's a fascinating conversation. So I know you've done some real estate. You've done some Airbnb. You've got a place in Costa Rica. You've got a beautiful home on the beach here in Sarasota. And I know you had some Airbnbs on Siesta Key, on canals that you sold. And so I know you've got a book coming out here as well. Let's talk about that book for a minute. What's it titled, and when do you think it'll come out?
Yeah, it's called 12 Words That Change Everything.
Okay.
And it's coming out September, October. It's just with the publishers right now, doing some final tweaks on formatting. And it's essentially a book about 12 words that in my life have been instrumental in creating the success and the freedom and the peace and all of the things that we've been able to build that aren't taught in school. There's a lot of ideas taught that don't help us at all. And there's a lot of things that people pass over, like resilience, right? Like relevance, like tenacity, like truth, where we just sort of scoot over that. But those are the very things that it takes to win in America today. You've got to be able to stick it out past everybody else. You've got to be able to handle setbacks and negativity and challenges and handle them positively. You've got to be able to look at cause and effect and judge that accurately. And if you don't, you're going to have a lot of problems in life. And they don't teach us these things. So it's sort of an expository on these 12 words, these 12 ideas that I feel are really instrumental in helping you get where you want to go.
Well, let's go through a couple.
Yeah, sure.
You mentioned truth. Talk about truth for a minute.
Yeah, truth.
What does that mean in your definition in your book?
So truth is the foundation on which basically all human cooperation can exist, right? It's a set of agreed upon actualities, right, that we can understand, that we can see repeated. And truth is really under assault today in a big way, right? There's a redefinition.
Don't get me started on
There's
that.
a redefinition campaign on almost everything, right? And that makes it really hard to cooperate, right? If we can't agree on basic facts, then we really can't move forward from there, right? We've got to have this set of things that was and is and will be in the future that we could say, these are real, these are accurate, these are right, these are true, and we can use that as a foundation to build on. And right thinking ultimately creates right actions and right behaviors. And there's a lot of people who believe stuff, even vehemently, that just is not right. We all know these people, right? And they end up having lots of challenges in their life, and they feel like the world is out to get them and things just never work out. And And really, they didn't pass the connect the dots in kindergarten, right? They weren't able to
I get hate from them every single day, literally every single day.
Absolutely.
And sometimes I get sucked in. Most of the time I don't, but
these are just low truth individuals, right?
Yeah. That's bottom line. They don't understand what's really happening in the world. Locked in their mom's basements or whatever. They're entitled. I remember seeing this video of this kid in a Starbucks crying because he had to work a double shift at Starbucks. And I'm like, this whole entitlement mentality that's out there right now, and femininity of men, if you ask me, frankly, as well. But I like that. So truth, that's not what I expected, and that's an awesome definition of truth. So talk about relevance for a minute. You brought up relevance.
Yeah, relevance is the second chapter in the book.
Okay.
And this is more today than ever before, something that's needed if you want to keep winning. It's one thing to win. It's another thing to win consistently, to become a serial winner, to win on a recurring basis, right? Probably my next book will be called Repeat, and it will be the study of why most people cannot repeat success and why some people and teams can create dynasties and legacies. It's a different way of thinking. It's a different way you approach the game or the business or the problem. But ultimately, relevance is about your ability to continuously reinvent yourself even after you've arrived, right? It's what you do at the top that determines where you go from there. And there's so many case studies today of companies and people who get to the top of their game and they don't continue to reinvent.
They stop innovating.
And
Peter Drucker said every business is nothing but marketing and innovation.
Absolutely.
So they stop innovating. So that's relevance. That's how you maintain relevance.
Yeah, and you've got to be willing to hold nothing sacred, right? You look at Apple. Apple makes virtually none of their money today off of computers. It's smartphones and other things and cloud services and all sorts of other things that they have that are really miles and miles away from how they started, but they were willing to continue to innovate and to question who they were, where they were going, and being willing to break things that aren't broken because one day they will be, right? And a lot of people don't want to do that. They have something that works, right? But if it's working now, it's pretty much a guarantee that 15 or 20 years from now, or maybe much sooner, it's not going to be working.
Right.
What got us here doesn't get us there. It's the same thing with businesses and leadership. You've got to constantly be reassessing, and relevance is really influence now. Like that's what relevance is, right? Is I mean something to you in this moment, and that's why I'm relevant. And when I cease that meaning, when I cease that impact, I lose my relevance. When I lose my relevance, I lose most everything.
Interesting. I think you mentioned commitment as well.
Yeah, commitment is another one. That's like a lost art today, right? Like nobody wants to be committed to anything. They're committed they're committed to real estate until it gets hard, till there's a downturn, until interest rates go to 8, until there's a challenge, right? They're committed to their relationships.
Let me interrupt you for a second.
Sure.
I talk about this, how you have to make a decision, okay? And the Latin root for the word decision means to cut off. It doesn't mean dip your toe in the water. It doesn't mean 1 foot in, 1 foot out. I mean, and the example I give is if you're going to attack the island, you burn your ships because you're taking their damn ships home. Then you're committed.
Yeah.
And that's what we're talking about here.
Yeah, and what's interesting about the word decide is it ends in IDE. And if you look at that, think like homicide, suicide, pesticide. These are things that really mean to make permanent. That's what a decision is. It's to make permanent.
I'm going to use that. I like that.
And most people, they make decisions slowly, if at all, and then are quick to change them. And what I found about the most successful people I know is they make quick decisions, and then they'll rarely ever change them.
Right.
They're in for the long haul, whatever it takes. One of my favorite quotes, Rod, and I'm going to paraphrase this because I'm going to butcher it, but it's by a guy named William H. Murray a couple hundred years ago, and he said, once one totally commits oneself, then providence moves too. All sorts of material assistance and unforeseen connections create and materialize that he could have never seen coming from that act of deciding. That's what precipitates the people, the relationships, the connections, the funding. That is all a byproduct of being all in, burn the ships, no backing out.
And honestly, it's a component of manifesting as well, because if you basically in your mind believe you already have something that you want, it ties into what you're talking. I mean, you're basically committing your brain to that process, and That's how I've manifested everything I've ever wanted in life is to give thanks as if I already have it.
Yeah, it's a very interesting thing. In a previous book that I wrote, I talked about an idea called T-BAR, and it's an acronym. It stands for thoughts become beliefs, beliefs become actions, actions become results, right? And so what you're talking about there in terms of the manifesting,
It's the T to B. Yeah.
And it's the B to the A. It's once you really believe that, you will begin to act in those ways, right? So if there was a fire alarm going off in here right now, we'd probably get up and leave, right? Just to be safe.
It's kind of funny you said that, because in the last interview we had here, lightning struck literally a block away. And I have a video of it where I'm like, holy shit. Because it's like big. Anyway, that's just funny you said that. It's timely.
If we really believed that, we'd probably pick up and leave the building. We would act on that.
Right.
Now, we might be wrong. It might have just been a false flag,
right,
but it's still going to determine our actions. What we believe, we act on always.
Right.
And so that idea of affirmations and I am statements, all that, what you're doing is you're conditioning your belief system so that you can take action on those things.
Right. So what other, you have, let me give your advice to someone who's sitting here listening to this that knows they need to freaking do something.
Yeah.
They know they need to get off square one and make something happen. And most of the people listen to me are, aspiring multifamily investors. They see, the success that my students have. They see, they hear about it, and they just haven't taken action. What might you suggest to them that might aid them in making a move?
Sure. You can't steer a parked car.
Yeah.
Okay. So you got to get moving. Once you get moving, you can change direction quickly and easily. When you're at a standstill trying to crank that wheel, you're going to exhaust yourself and you're still not going to go anywhere. You're just going to move the wheel left or right. And so action is everything, right? There's nothing that cannot be overcome with massive action. Skill set deficiencies, lack of funding. If you talk to enough people, if you shake enough hands, if you shake enough trees, something's going to fall out of that. And that's how I built my first business. There were so many days I didn't know where to go, how I would get another client, where I'd find another agent. I thought I was out of business. And I'd go in my neighborhood and I'd door knock and introduce myself. And sure enough, one or two of those people be looking to do something. Hey, I just left my job. And you just got to go and make things happen. You can't wait for things to happen.
My most successful students by far are the ones that take massive freaking action. They're not the smartest. They're not the most well-connected. They're not the ones that start out with the most. None of it. They just take massive action, and they're the most successful students I have.
And they end up with the best relationships and the best things.
Sure they do.
Because the action, the byproduct of the action is the skill set they're waiting on to take the action.
Yeah. That's right.
So,
That's right.
So they think, well, if I knew more, listen, you're never going to know everything you need to know, right? I call this basically an action threshold. I actually talk about it a little bit in the upcoming book. Every one of us has an action threshold or an amount of knowledge or skill or certainty that we feel like we need to have before we
make a move. Yeah.
And
the analytical people, it's even more pronounced. They have to check off every single box.
Exactly. And so their action threshold is high. In other words, there's a lot that needs to be overcome before they'll move.
Right.
One of the keys to leadership and success is to systematically lower that action threshold where you trust yourself and your instinct and your work ethic,
your abilities,
and your fight, and your tenacity, and your grit. When the higher level of trust you have there, the lower level of action threshold you need, and then you can take action much more boldly and much more quickly than you were doing before. And there on the other side of that are all the lessons you've been wanting to learn. What you were waiting for is there on the other side of the action.
Oh, great great definition. A great way to describe that. So those of you that are analytical, I hope you heard. If you need to rewind and listen to that again, listen to that again. That is a great way to define what locks a lot of people up and how you get past it. So, this is going to be a real general question for you, but talk about any epiphanies you've had in your journey, and about any aspect of life or business or whatever.
Sure.
Aha moments. You're like, holy shit, now I get it.
I had a couple of those earlier in my business career. So I was stuck making around $300,000 a year for a couple of years. This is back in 08, 09. So that wasn't bad money in Michigan. I was 25 years old. It wasn't bad, but I was stuck nonetheless. Like we all get stuck at different places. And And I was really good at what I did, but I wasn't duplicating that well. I had not invested into taking my brain and putting it on paper, having SOPs, having KPIs, having accountability systems, having metrics that I could watch that were looking at the front end of the business. And so I actually hired a coach back in 2009, and that's what he worked with me on. And it took us 18 months, 24 months. We went from making $300,000 a year net profit to $1 million a year net profit. And my workload cut in half because I wasn't having to do everything. So one of the biggest things that I had as an epiphany or an aha is the need to systematize everything that you do. Because without that, there is no freedom and there is no value in what you're building.
Every business is nothing but people and systems.
Absolutely.
Period. You get the best people, you put the systems together. Great book on the topic by Michael Gerber called E-Myth. I'm sure you're familiar with it. Yeah. And there are lots of different iterations of E-Myth. E-Myth for attorneys, E-Myth for... Yeah, so you're a very driven guy. How old are you?
I just turned 40 2 days ago.
Damn. I've got socks that have 2 decades on you. So you're a very driven guy. Where does that drive come from? What's the why? What makes you freaking jump out of bed in the morning?
That's a great question, and it evolves over time.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, it evolves over time. What I always tell people, Rod, is hunger is a discipline. Okay, if you stuff yourself full for Thanksgiving dinner, you don't want to go to Little Caesars Pizza 2 hours later. You're full, right? And most people are full with average and ordinary and okay. And they don't have any room in their life for the truly great and the truly spectacular. So one of the things that I'll say is part of it is some wiring. Like I remember being in 3rd grade, and every Wednesday I would walk a half a mile after school to the American Legion Hall for the baseball card show. And I had talked a guy named Rich into giving me one of his 3 booths, and I would buy and sell baseball cards. By the time I was in 6th grade, I had 60,000 baseball cards.
No kidding.
Yeah, I mean, it was tens of thousands of dollars of it. And that's just like what I did. I got into music. I wanted a guitar. I figured at $10 an hour, this is how many hours I need to work. Who will pay me $10 an hour, and what should I do? So I started gardening for neighbors and landscaping and doing. I've always been able to see something I want and then figure out how to go get that. And most people don't know what they want. They're unclear, right? When the why is clear, the how-to appears. When you are dialed in on what you want and why you want it, it is emotionally connected with you. You will find a way to go and obtain that. Most people just aren't very clear on the why, or they don't really believe that that could happen for them. And so for me, it's been a constant process of, I talk about goal setting and vision on like this continuum. And we want to be in this sort of sweet spot where our vision and our goal pulls us. Like most people are on one side of the continuum or the other. On this side, you have goals that they shouldn't even be called goals, right? It's like, hey, I can easily do these
tasks,
and they're so small that it doesn't change your life in any meaningful way, even if you get it. So there's no gravity there. There's nothing pulling you. On the extreme other end of that are things that are so big and unbelievable that your subconscious rejects it. It says, nope, you're not talking to me.
I'll be a billionaire. Right.
Yeah, you're not talking to me. And so nothing happens. What we're looking for is this sweet spot that has both gravity and believability, right? And so what happens, Rod, is when you start moving down that continuum, what happens is you can expand the outside metric of that continuum.
Sure. Success will cause you to expand that outside metric, and the things get bigger. I used to have a sign above my bed that says $100,000 a month net income. It's $1 million now. It's been there forever, but I know you believe in mentors. Talk about any mentors that you've had over the years. You're a mentor, obviously, now, as I am. But talk about the value of mentors and maybe some of the ones you've had over the years.
Yeah. So mentors are the cheat code. Right? Because you can learn by your experience or other people's experiences, right? Okay, so my very first mentor I had was my boss when I worked at the church. His name was Stephen. He was a young guy, but he was really, really smart. He'd built and sold a couple of businesses. He traveled all over the world. Just a genius sort of guy. Okay. And he got me started on self-development. He gave me a book by Dr. Brian Clemmer. It said, if how-tos were enough, we'd all be thin, rich, and happy. And it was just this little teeny booklet. And it taught me about cause and effect and how things really work and how we can think about things to bring things about, right? What we think about, we bring about. Right. Yeah, and that was sort of my start. That one book caused me to question my supposed lot in life, right? I was not a victim. I was not stationary. I could do something about this. And if I got better, things would get better. There aren't very many people that really believe that. They think, well, what's the point? What's the point of me learning this? What's the point of me investing in Rod's boot camp? What's the point? All they're saying is, I don't really believe in cause and effect. I don't believe that better information, better relationships, and better systems will get me better results. But that's not the case. Or
they don't believe in themselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, he was probably my first mentor in the finance business. Man, I was so blessed to have a number of mentors who were well beyond me in terms of years, but also they were Deca or centimillionaires, great families. They had everything that I wanted in my life. I thought when I looked at these guys, I'm like, man, if I could ever be half the man that he is, that's all I could ever want in my life. Wealthy and with a family that loves them.
Did you approach them to help you, or did you retain them and pay them?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
So in that business, I earned my way into relationship with them.
Gotcha.
So what happened is I studied their material from abroad. I would buy their CDs, or I would listen to it, and I would learn from it, and then I would act on it. And then as I started getting better and better results, pretty soon these same guys would reach out to me and say, hey, would you come speak for my group here, or would you come do this over there? And so I ended up building really close personal relationships with almost all of these people over time, because I had been a student of their work and then implemented it. It'd be like somebody coming to you and saying, Rod, I took one of your boot camps. You didn't know me, but I have $500 million worth of multifamily now based on what you taught. You'd probably say, hey man, come to this next boot camp and talk a little bit about your experience. How did you do that?
Of course.
So that's basically what I did.
Basically what happened. Yeah. So you said tapes. Was this business similar to like an MLM type of thing?
Sort of. It's an agency. It's
Okay.
like real estate.
Okay.
Yeah. So I had agents. I had 1,400 agents, right? But I got paid off of sales that they did. So it's no different than.
But the top agents would create tapes and sell them, or
no? So they actually weren't allowed to sell them.
Okay.
Yeah. So people would go around and they'd film something.
Okay.
At a big event or whatever, and then there'd be like these third-party companies where you could go get it. So like, man, my birthday presents, my Christmas presents, the first 2-3 years in business, or CDs of different things.
Right. Interesting. Very interesting. So, so you're good at building teams.
Yeah,
Okay.
I would say that.
Okay, I mean, you sold an 8-figure business. You had to, unless you had a COO that did it all for you. Okay, and the multifamily real estate game is absolutely a team sport. It is not something you do alone. It's just not done. Everybody gets on a team, or builds a team, or joins a team, and goes out there and buys these, $40-50 million properties, $10 million properties, whatever. So, how do you build a team? Talk about team building.
Yeah. So it starts with who you are and where you're going, and being able to make sure that your dream is big enough that other people can fit their dreams inside.
Good answer.
Right? So that's where it starts.
Starts with a vision.
Yeah, because if people don't know where you're going, then any path will get you and them there. And so people want to be a part of something that's bigger than them. They want to be a part of something meaningful, something that moves them in their life in some way. And so if you can provide that to them, that they will find a home with you. So that's step one. Step two is integrity. You can attract people with a vision. You keep people with integrity and honor, and bending over backwards to make sure that you're doing the right things for people, even beyond what
even when it hurts.
Even when it hurts. I'll never forget, one of my mentors told me, and this is a long time ago, with the founder of the company that we built, who's now a multi-billionaire. He said, I walked in, my commissions were $1,500 short. I walked into his office. He was in the middle of a meeting. He said, Bill, what do you need? He said, well, my commissions were $1,500 short. He said he just opened his checkbook and wrote him a check. Didn't want to see it. Just said, I trust you. Here you go. And this was this sort of, he said it was $1,500. $100 million later, that one little act that said, I'm good for this. I'm going to do what I say. I'm not going to question you over this little stuff. That stuck with him all those years, that when he picked up and moved his family to a completely different state to start to make sure that they were not, just in one place, had to start all over again. That sort of thing, like, this guy's going to do the right thing for me.
That built that culture.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the second thing you need. And then the third thing you need is some results.
stop before you go into results. Just integrity for a minute. I mean, that's our number one core value. I think it should be the number one core value in anything that you do. There's a book by a guy named Huntsman. Oh God, now the name's escaping me. Doggone it. But it's just about doing what's right. It's a small little book. Look up Huntsman, guys, if you're listening, about integrity. It's an incredible book, a billionaire that wrote it. Yeah, I just want to hammer home integrity. I don't think there's anything more important. We hammer that in my organizations. We do what's right, like I say, even if it hurts.
Yeah.
Okay, please continue.
Yeah, no, it's so important because without that, you don't keep great people. Right. You keep bottom feeders, people who also don't mind being people without integrity. You build a team of that, you can go to jail.
Sure, sure you can. Yeah, right? Lots of people do. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, and then third is results. So people will come for the vision. Right. Okay, they stay because of character and integrity, and they move because of results. Mm-hmm. They need to be able to look at you and say, "This is the person who can get me where I want to go." Mm. And if you put those three things together, you'll build massive teams and get a lot of multiplication going on. And
nice. So talk about a time you got your ass kicked.
Oh my gosh.
A seminar. I call them seminars. That was a $50 million seminar. Talk about a seminar, a doozy, a big one, where you really got spanked.
Oh my
and the
goodness.
lesson, obviously there's lessons. Right?
Yeah. So I'm going to preface this with, luckily I've made more good decisions than bad ones. And so I've evaded a lot of the really negative stuff that I've seen happen to a lot of my friends. Thank goodness. Right. But I mean, I can remember in 2010 in my finance business, I had a couple of guys who were building big teams. And I was just so happy that finally I had anybody doing anything, right, besides me. And it all looked okay, but they weren't doing things the right way. And instead of digging in and trying to find out what was going on, I just sort of turned a blind eye to that, right? And
subconsciously, you're like, oh, this is going so well, it's okay.
Yeah, I'm just going to leave it be. I'm just going to leave it be. Well, that worked for about 9 months, and then that whole thing imploded on itself. And my income got cut by about 70% overnight.
Wow.
Right? And I had just bought a new big house, and I just had all this other expenditures I was making, and all of a sudden I'm like, this is not good. I don't have what I need here. And it was good because it taught me to inspect what I expect and to understand that things that are built inappropriately won't be built for long, right? And so those were valuable lessons that I recovered from and built a great culture where, we had, as in the compliance in that world, we were always super high rated there because we built a team that did things the right way and didn't shortcut stuff. But that was tough for me, and it was really scary, right? Because I just had a new kid. I just got this big expense.
You could have lost the business over it. You could have lost the whole business. Regulators come in and you're done.
Absolutely.
Right.
And so that was a major challenge for me. Right. The other thing is sort of different. In 2019, midway through the month of June, I started having like these weird neurological symptoms all of a sudden. 4 weeks later, dude, I could hardly walk. I could hardly talk. I couldn't wash my hair.
Did you do the jab?
No, this is before that, right?
Okay, wow. Okay.
And I didn't know what on earth was going on. So you Google that stuff, and it's not good. It's like, ALS or something like that.
Right.
And then, so I went into all this neurological stuff. I had the brain scans and all that. And that specific disease, which is what they thought it might have been, it's just, you just wait and see. Like, hey, if in a year, you're getting worse, you probably have that, and you have like a 2-3 year life expectancy. So here I am, I'm multi-millionaire. I've worked all this time building a dream life. I'm building this beautiful home in Michigan. I got my place in Siesta. I'm like getting where I wanted to be. And all of a sudden I'm like, I might not be here in 2 years. And that time, 6 months from now, I may not be able to like do basic things. And it was the scariest time of my life. And it was one of the loneliest times of my life because I'm like, I'm not going to see my kids grow up. I'm not going to do this, all the dreams I have. It was really tough. But it taught me to value every moment and to value every person and every interaction. And before then, dude, like so many driven people who are listening to this show right now, it was like the next deal, the next thing, the next goal, the next affirmation I can check off, the next thing I can pull off the dream board. And I was so future focused that I wasn't living my life.
You weren't present in the moment. Yeah.
And it took me being what I thought was very close to losing everything to wake up to that. And so I can look back on and say it was one of the scariest times of my life, but it was the biggest gift I ever had because it caused me to stop and focus on the things that really, really matter to me. You're saying, hey, I was really driven, and I said it's seasons and it evolves. And today, as interesting as it is, I would say I'm less driven today than I've ever been in my life, not because I don't have goals or things I want to accomplish, but because I'm not willing to let those rob me of my life.
Yeah, no. I will tell you, it's one of the biggest things I spend time on with my students. The financial success is super freaking important. But I remember, I told you about that house over on Siesta Key that I built on the beach like you have, and I'd come home to my kids every night and I'd play with them, but I wasn't there mentally. I wasn't present. It's the greatest regret in my life to this day. Yeah. They'll say I was a great dad, but I didn't live up to my own expectations. And so I spent a lot of time on that. When I teach time management, you're going to do a book on time management. You said when I teach it, one of the components is blocking time for the things that matter. I mean, literally if you have to block time for your family, you freaking block time for your family.
Absolutely.
Because it's the most important.
Yeah, one of the things that I have taught people there is a concept called solid yellow lines. So when you're driving down the road and there's oncoming traffic next to you and there's two solid yellow lines, what does that mean?
You're not supposed to cross.
Don't pass.
Right.
So you got to put you got to put solid yellow lines around your 5 F's: faith, family, fitness, finance, your future self. And those things go in your schedule and they're non-negotiable. And you just...
What were those again? One more time.
Faith, family, fitness, finance, and future self. Who are you becoming? Your faith.
That's good.
Your family, your fitness.
That's good.
Yeah.
Did you get that from somebody, or is that on? Did you come up with that?
Well, I'm sure I've heard the 4 F's: the faith, family, fitness, all over the place. Sometimes there's friends, sometimes
I like future self too, buddy. That's really good, man. That's good stuff. So, if you went back and told 18-year-old Ian something about with what you know now, would you do anything differently, or do you feel like you needed all those life experiences to be where you are now?
That's an interesting question, right? Because all those experiences made me who I am now, got me where I am now. Sure, there's definitely some life hacks that that I would help 18-year-old Ian with. Learning. I'm a high A personality. I have no R in me whatsoever.
Right.
I love people, but people are work to me, right? And I would have worked much harder, much earlier on just learning how to care for people and working on that. That's been one of my biggest Achilles tendons, or Achilles heels rather, right? Is that I just, I'm so focused on the next goal. And I think you are too, and I forget to tell you that you're amazing today. Right. Or I forget to stop and ask about what's happening with you and your wife, who are having some challenges and it's weighing on you. And so I would have done that much, much sooner. The second thing I would tell myself is invest in a coach or a mentor much earlier. I mean, I used that sort of as like my last resort when I was stuck, instead of a cheat code to move more quickly,
really,
sooner.
You're basically just paying for speed. That's really
Absolutely.
it. I mean, can you do it yourself? Yeah, it's going to take a lot longer. But Michael Jordan had 5 coaches at the height of his career. Okay, best in the world with 5 coaches, right? Nutrition coach, relationship coach, head coach, assistant coach, physical therapy coach, or whatever.
And you're paying for speed, but you're also paying for longevity and relevance,
that's
right?
true
Because
too.
what's interesting about Jordan, at the time, he's the best basketball player in the world.
Right.
Yet he has coaches. Think about Tiger Woods at his prime. Best golfer in the world, yet he has coaches. By default, the people coaching him are not as good at executing on said thing, but what they do is they help him see blind spots. They help round him out. They help him create rhythm and longevity and sustainability and physical health. And those are all things that people don't necessarily see as the main product in coaching. They're sort of byproducts, but those are the most valuable reasons.
That's right. No, they're little things. They're not big things, but they're big little things in many cases, if that makes any sense. Yeah. Love it. What's some of the best advice you've ever gotten in your lifetime?
Stay away from the 3 Ds: drugs, debt, and divorce. Okay, it was one of my mentors. Save Myself Broke was another one of my mentors. Those were probably 2 of the best pieces of advice that I acted on, and saved myself a lot of heartache, and was able to put away a lot of cash that let us make good decisions moving forward with things. Those were probably some of the best
Save yourself broke.
Save yourself broke. So one of the things that one of my mentors encouraged me to do, we all have capacities. And once we hit that capacity, we pull back from it. And so we all have financial capacities. And if we start exceeding it, we'll start self-sabotaging or we'll manifest
limits we've placed in our brains.
We'll manifest challenges in other ways. And one of the things he helped me do that I do with some of my coaching students that are making more money than they've ever seen, and it dulls them, right? Success doesn't make you invincible. It makes you fat and lazy. And so it dulls them and their hunger goes down. And so one of my mentors told me, Ian, set up a PAC every month, enough to put you into the red, like a pre-authorized checking pull into an investment account, and find a number that puts you into the red so that you work this month to make sure you don't go into the red. And as you continue to build, continue to raise that number. And eventually, we were saving $50, $60, $70, $80,000, $100,000 a month automatically, so that I didn't see it and I felt broke. I wasn't broke. I tricked myself into becoming rich by saving myself to the point where my money awareness was high always, because I never felt comfortable. I was comfortable. I just didn't feel that way because the money was not accessible to me.
You did that to push yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's a book called Profit First. It's kind of along the same lines. You take out the profit and you save it or whatever, or you spend it, whatever you do with it. What do you think is the best book you've ever read for business?
That is a good question. Yeah. Gosh, there are so many of them. It depends on, I guess, what you want to learn. You have obviously your classics like Think and Grow Rich.
Yeah, I've given away thousands of copies of that one. Right.
All of those.
Right.
Gosh, one of the best books I've ever read was called Launching a Leadership Revolution. It was by two guys named Chris Brady and Orrin Woodward. And these guys were actually multi-levelers. They were with Amway, and then they had this, and then they had that. But these guys built teams of like 100,000 people plus 3 times. And it was just this really...
The name of the book again?
It's called Launching a Leadership Revolution. And you can't go build stuff like that unless you know what you're doing with people. It's just not possible, right? And it was such a foundational book for me in terms of the X's and the O's of leadership. Fundamental, practical, foundational. How do you get people to follow you? How do you keep them following you? How do you continue to grow when you've exceeded and surpassed maybe your wildest dreams? So that was one. And then there was another book. I don't know what your audience's spiritual tone is. We won't go much into that, but it was a book called Breakout by a guy named Joel Osteen, who's a big pastor.
Of course. Right.
And that book, for some reason, there's just something there that spoke to me on the inside that really got me to believe that I was supposed to do something big and be a part of some magnificent happening in my life. And again, what you believe, you act on. And that book foundationally changed the way I approach life, approach my goals, approached what I did every day.
Wow.
Instead of just talking to you, I talked to you with an expectation that you were going to do something amazing, and we were going to, and you just, people can sense that.
Right.
They
sense that confidence or that drive or that passion.
Absolutely.
Right.
It's an intangible. They can't put their finger on it. They couldn't describe it, but they know it's there.
Yeah. Love it. All right, last question. I mean, you are successful in so many different areas. What is your definition of success?
That is a great question. I think it's changed throughout my life. I think it depends where our values are at different times, but I'm going to go back to Coach John Wooden's definition of success. He said, success is the peace of mind that you get from knowing that you've done your best to be the best that you're capable of being. And that is one of my most foundational beliefs, right? That like, look, he said something in They Call Me Coach. He said, when you're doing your best, really your best, you're giving everything you have, there's no scoreboard that can label you a loser. And when you're not, there's no scoreboard that can label you a winner. You might beat some other people, but you're not living up to your full potential. And you're winning, but you're not succeeding. And my goodness, there's a lot of people out here winning today, but they're not succeeding. They're winning in an area, but they're losing in some other places. And so success to me, really, Rod, is the 5 F's, right? Yeah. You're winning in your faith. You're winning with your family. you're winning with your finances, you're winning with your fitness, and you're winning with your future self.
Yeah.
And I really believe that those 5 things, they're locked in together, right?
Oh,
and
sure they are.
That winning in one and losing in another is not a win.
One of the things we do at my boot camp is we do is like wheel of life, and you rate all these different areas and how you're doing, and and you mark 0 to 10 from the middle on the outside, and you look at it like a wheel. You shade in the inside, and you look at it like a wheel, and is it going to be a smooth ride? Because all of those factors come into play.
Yeah.
Good stuff, brother. I've really enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah, it was
man.
a lot of fun.
You're a sharp guy. Yeah, appreciate you coming on and coming over, and great to meet you. Hell, we live in the same town. It's
I know.
crazy not to have met.
We've got a lot of the same friends, and
Yeah, right.
hey, let's
Crazy.
get together.
Yeah,
right?
for sure. We've got to do that. Well, I appreciate you, brother. Great to meet you and spend some time with you.
Thanks, Rod.
Yep. So one other quick thing. We encounter so many people that are frankly frustrated. They're looking in the mirror and they're frustrated that they haven't been able to escape the rat race. They haven't been able to build cash flow to the point where they're able to have financial and time freedom with their families. And maybe they see other people buying real estate and creating, incredible cash flow, and they think, well, it's just scary. Buying apartments is intimidating. And I get it. See, that's why we created our Warrior Mentorship Program. They're our coaching students, and they've had extraordinary results. My students, I've been teaching about 5 years and own upwards of 140,000 units now that we know of, right? And we feel like it's just getting going. Now we're looking to grow this group and really take it to the next level. And honestly believe that the greatest transfer of wealth could be upon us right now with this current economic environment. Everything's going on sale. So we're looking for people who want to follow a proven framework, really like a blueprint or a map, literally step by step. And then they're able to leverage our systems and our incredible network to raise money and equity, to find deals and close those deals and build partnerships, really nationwide. So if you're interested in finding out more about how you can become more in our incredible network and take advantage of the unbelievable opportunities that are upon us, you can apply to my Warrior Mentorship Program by texting the word CRUSH to 72345. Or you can go to mentorwithrod.com. And what we'll do is we'll set up a call so you can check us out and we can check you out and see if it's a fit. Now, again, you can go to mentorwithrod.com or text the word CRUSH to 72345 to apply, and we will speak soon.